All right, so we are now on Zoom. This is Matt Hughes, Chair of the Tourism Board. It is 5:36, and so I call this meeting to order. Are there any changes to the agenda? And I defer to Shannon just to identify if there's any changes that we need to make. So we are now on Zoom. This is Matt Hughes, Chair of the Tourism Board. It is.
Okay, can you all hear me okay? Yeah, okay. So I had some reverb from YouTube.
I was going to say, I was hearing myself talk in my ears, so.
The only change that I have is under number 5, action items, item C, member Kim Tesoro's seat is coming up for reappointment at the end of the month. She has indicated that she would like to be reappointed, so I just wanted to add that so we could get the ball rolling on that.
Okay, great. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended according to the recommendation of staff?
Can I make a motion? Am I allowed to make a motion?
You are allowed to make a motion.
I make a motion that the staff's recommendation be approved and that Ms. Tesoro.
Well, no, that's just the approval of the agenda as amended.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Once again, I misunderstood. But I made that.
So your motion is to approve. Okay, your motion is to approve the agenda as amended. Is there a second?
I second.
All right, Barney has seconded. All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is approved. You all have also received the minutes from the June 22nd meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
There's a correction on those minutes. I think they're dated for a meeting of July 22nd, so we'll need to amend the date of the minutes.
July.
All right.
You're right. She's right.
That is noted. Are there any other proposed corrections? Hearing no other corrections other than changing the date from July 22nd to June 22nd, is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Mark Bateman has moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Don't be shy, people.
Tommy Stan has seconded. Is there any discussion and debate? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
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 All opposed, like sign. The ayes have it, and the agenda is approved. And now we will move over to presentations, and I'll just say in this order, and then we can definitely track according to this. Hillsborough Art Council, Orange County History Museum, and then Burwell School. So I'll go ahead and tee all up, and I'll turn it over to Tori, then Tori, then Sherry, and then Brooks Gravener. So go ahead, Tori, you've got the floor.
Thank you, guys. Just to give, I guess we're kind of giving a wrap up as well as a look ahead. Is that correct, Matt? Is that what would be helpful?
I think it really would be helpful to know where our contract partners are with COVID, because that's been a good chunk of the contract, and then just where you hope to go in the new fiscal year.
Sure. So to give the Q4 report quickly, the Art Walk was a pretty easy wrap up. The funds that were budgeted for advertising and some overhead costs were basically spent prior to COVID. The last season ended with a lot of positive results from our partners, and the new season began, of course, at the end of January. We were able to have 2 art walks in 2020 before COVID kicked in and everything got canceled. And a lot of our art walk partners were shut down completely or only virtual in a variety of ways. So we were basically kind of lost the rest of the fiscal year. But again, that didn't affect the tourism funds. Once things started reopening again in June and July, we've started trying to put together some kind of virtual art walk, which we haven't found the perfect formula for yet. We've still been promoting what the partners are doing, and we are trying to keep our community up to date on what's going on in the arts for the most part. It does sound like there were some people downtown on Friday for the art walk, and including one of our board members happened to be in our shop. It was closed. We have not been able to reopen for the art walk. But he said there were some people who looked like they were art walkers and were, checking out to see if we were open. So that's good news. And, we're certainly taking that ahead into August. Our shop is run by all volunteers though, so it's tricky to reopen because we have a very short volunteer list that we're working with right now, people who are comfortable being face-to-face with the public. And then the wrap up for last Friday's is a little bit longer. The program, of course, was canceled. We canceled the last Fridays beginning in April. Basically, in March, we pulled the plug on the April event, and the rest of them have kind of followed suit. We're not able to hold the first half of the summer season from April to June, as our contract, states that we should. We did successfully execute the other 3 shows. So just as you recall, the last Friday contract's kind of weird because it's like half of one season and then the beginning of the other season. So last season ended successfully. We had no issues. But this cancellation this year did leave us a remaining balance in our tourism board account. However, it also lost about $6,700 worth of revenue for the organization. And of course, it was kind of out of everybody's hands as far as the lost revenue, but we did have, a monthly $25 vendor fee that was coming in monthly at the rate of about 40 vendors per last Friday event. And in addition to some sponsors who have had to step back just because their business, everybody's local business owners, so their businesses have been impacted as well. And I know I guess it's on the agenda to talk about, the tourism contracts and how those funds will be, the discussion of how the funds, if they need to be paid back or not, but it just felt worthwhile to mention it here in the wrap up, that we're still, even with the funds remaining in our balance, we're still at a loss for the program. We are in fundraising mode. We started fundraising before the end of the fiscal year just to try and make up for some of the lost revenue from events and programs that we've had to cancel, since we are very much a social gathering organization. And then we've started some new initiatives as well. And just to get in, looking ahead as far as COVID planning, because I know that will be useful for the board. We do have a 3-part plan that kind of details how all of our program and administration should respond based on the various phases of reopening. So as the state hands down, phase 1, phase 2 guidelines, we have kind of a match that says this is where we should be at that point. This has guided our programs, including the Art Walk and last Fridays, and our response to the changes as they come, or in our case lately, as they stay. But it allows us to kind of give ourselves parameters to help us succeed under whatever the circumstances are at the time. We've also adjusted our budget strategy to allow for a little more flexibility and a slightly different allocation per program, all internal stuff, but we're looking at COVID as it's going to be here for more of the long haul. And when we're ready to get back to programs, we'll be able to jump right back in. And in the meantime, so as far as Art Walk, we haven't honestly made a whole lot of progress in making it virtual because everybody's just kind of all over the place. Some of the venues are open, they opened right away. Others are not. Some went virtual immediately and others have not. So we're still trying to kind of figure out how we can gather that information and put out something a little more consistent and cohesive without just confusing everybody. And I don't know if we're going to have that in place by August. I'm hoping, my goal right now is to have that in place by September. As we get towards the holidays, it's going to be more and more important for these businesses to make up a lot of that lost revenue as they can. And so we will continue working on that. And I've been in touch with the Art Walk partners, and we've done all kinds of polling and surveys, and, you know, just trying to figure out what's going to work best for everybody, because again, you know, it's a variety of types of businesses as well as a variety of strategies that we're dealing with. So since this is it's majority an advertising budget that we get from the tourism board, as well as some overhead, we're just kind of holding off on that spending right now until we can get this plan in place a little bit better. But we have continue to be in contact with our folks at WUNC, which is where we do a large amount of the advertising for this program. It seems to be working well. And so as soon as we kind of have a better model in place for promoting it, we will reach back out to them and maybe some other local News of Orange and other local organizations to try and do a push this fall. As far as last Fridays, I don't know if any of you were able to tune in. We did miss the end of the fiscal year, so the first half of the last Friday season, but we were able to feature a live streaming of the band, the Ghost and Bones, on Friday. Nash Street Tavern and WHUP were partners in this, and Nash Street happens to be set up for the kind of audio and streaming that was needed to connect with WHUP. I guess they had a momentary glitch, but they were able to get it a nice clear signal. Donations were raised for the Arts Council, and WHUP were splitting donations. Nash Street is doing it as a sponsorship. And so at this point, since we're not expecting to be able to open for last Friday concerts, we have secured this model for the last two fall concerts, as well. We were able to use 3 of the 6 bands that had been originally booked. Our contract does allow these circumstances to dissolve the contract basically with the other bands, but we wanted to give them the first opportunity since we had, planned to pay them for a gig. We didn't want to just toss them aside. So the August concert will be with Love and Valor, and the September concert will be with the Shoal Diggers. And you'll see marketing and other pieces coming out related to that. I guess they had some people in the parking lot across the street checking out the show the best they could, streaming it. So let's see, I've got some notes here. We had over 700 viewers participated, and the reach for the post is still growing. People are still going back in and watching. WHUP, again, we partnered with them as part of the Pass the Hat program to fundraise for both of our organizations that really need it right now. We were able to do this program with mostly volunteer effort and a lot of volunteer expertise. So we were able to save a little bit on the production costs. And, the plan is that those funds retained from production can be used in the future to, really go out and enhance the spring concerts when we're able to do it again, hopefully. And of course, we'll keep planning as things change and shift. I didn't make any notes for the handmade parade. I haven't had a chance to touch base with Tinka, but last we spoke, we were leaning towards doing some online workshops. That's kind of the first big push of the handmade parade in the year prior, is to start connecting with schools and doing some workshops. And I think at this point, a lot of the schools, the art teachers are going to be looking for content and online content. So building this out to meet the the needs and the accessibility of them will be really important and definitely on our radar. And that was long. I'm sorry, guys. Any questions?
Yeah, Tori, can you tell me, so you're saying—
Well, I was just going to say, before Kim gets into her questions, it looks like everyone's in front of a computer except for perhaps Doris, who I think is supporting Tori. If you could, and Shannon, just for some moderation, if everyone could just use the raise hand feature, and we'll just go through that piece. So Kim, you already have the floor, but anyone else who's on the board, if you can just use the raise hands feature, and we'll just go through that way, that might be the easiest.
All right, so I just wanted you to back up on that, and you say you
Yeah.
guys decided to do the virtual streaming for the July, August, September,
Mhm.
and the purpose of that is for fundraising, is that correct?
The purpose, it's multi-purpose. Of course, fundraising right now for the Arts Council is really critical. We've lost a lot of programs right now, and so we've lost the revenue that comes along with the programs. But, more so it's about still making that connection with the arts and the community, bringing those bands that we've booked to the Hillsborough community in some way. And right now, virtual is really just the safest way to do that. If that changes between now and August or September, we're flexible in all of our planning, but I'm not anticipating that happening. We do have some other programs in the wings that are not part of these contracts that will hopefully bring a little bit more kind of live action to downtown through the arts. But
Did you end up paying the bands in full?
I believe so, yeah.
Can I ask a question now? Whatever Matt said about hands.
Yes, Mark, go ahead.
I don't know what you're talking about, Matt, with hands. Sorry. We all know I'm not that bright. Tori, and I've had problems communicating through these meetings in the past month. Please tell me you did not pay the bands full price.
I haven't seen the financials for it yet. So our whole cost for this was less than $1,000, and that includes all of the equipment, everything involved. I honestly, I have not. Yeah.
I understand you don't know, but we, for instance, money right now is a premium. You have money that you didn't spend, but you're telling us you don't have any money. I understand that, and I really appreciate that. But if no one making, and I'm sorry, sorry, Shannon, if no one making decisions
Mark.
for your group is realizing that bands are playing for about $0.25 on the dollar right now, and you're paying full price.
Well,
These are the reasons that
Can
I have a problem with a lot of
Tori, let me try and figure out what I think Mark's asking for.
Okay.
Is, Tori, when you paid the bands because you already booked them, what was the going rate? Was it the original agreed amount, or was it an amount that was less than that?
So we didn't pay the bands until we don't pay the bands until they play for us. So far we've only paid the one band that we have. And Mark, to answer your question, you're right. Bands and artists and everybody are taking gigs for the bottom dollar right now because they're available and they're desperate. Part of the Arts Council's mission is to support the artists. We don't necessarily feel comfortable paying $0.25 on the dollar for every gig that we can get just because we can get it. We need to support our artists and our community.
Okay.
And their livelihood as well.
Okay, and if you're going to have that outlook that you support the arts and you don't care what the going rate is, you're going to pay them because y'all already overpay them. You're going to pay them. Then don't come here to me and say, "Hey, we've still got $6,700, but we want to keep it because we're not making money because no one is trying to save money."
I think you misunderstood, Mark.
No, I understand very clear.
We have a remaining balance with the Tourism Board of about $3,000. We have lost revenue of last Friday's at $6,700. That is money that we should have taken in that was lost because of the cancellations. So when we pay the Tourism Board back, if the Tourism Board requests that money back, we will be in the whole $9,000 because of the COVID virus. That's what I'm saying.
Owning a business that's $250,000 in the hole because of COVID virus, I completely understand.
We're going to discuss any leftover funds for FY20 as another item. Are there any questions about Q3, Q4 from any other board members?
Yes, are they going to?
And this is specifically for the Arts Council.
Do what, Matt?
I said, and specifically for the Arts Council. But Mark, could you clarify the question that you're trying to ask?
Yes, you said, are there any more questions Q3, Q4. I want to know, and I'm not sure exactly what queue we're on with the rest of last Friday's, but are they going to, just because they feel bad for artists and want to support artists, are they going to keep paying top dollar for artists while the rest of us need every dime? And they're complaining too about not wanting to give us money back. And I'm sorry, Tori, this is not at you.
I understand, Mark. I do understand. And I wish I had those figures in front of me. And because it just happened on Friday, I have not gotten a full report other than the logistics report. And I can certainly report that back to the tourism board once I get it. I'd be more than happy to send that over. And I've actually just texted my committee to see if they could respond as well to answer that question for you. I just don't have a better answer at the moment.
Okay.
Well, I also do believe, going back to Shannon's point earlier, this is more of a conversation related to item 5A, more than right now in terms of just what our contract partners are reporting on.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this more in 5A and B, different adjustments that are being made due to COVID-19 and online programming.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Tori? No, hearing none. Sherry, you're up next.
Thank you, Tori.
Thank you, guys.
Hi, am I unmuted now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes, thanks very much. Just to let you know, I'm chairing the board of the museum, and we are actually, despite all of the bad stuff, I think we're in a really interesting place with the museum. Obviously, prior to the COVID, we were on track to hire staff to open in April or earlier even, because we were finally able to get all the repairs completed. We were going to redo our exhibits and update our inventory and all of those things. And then, of course, as you know, COVID came along and all public spaces were closed. So we have been reacting to that, but we have been very active in our reactions, in the sense that we have used this time, I think, wisely to really change the way the museum is being operated, and to make it more accessible and more interesting to people when they come back to Hillsborough, but also by expanding some of our social media. So I just want to say quickly, we have in January, our board members developed a new strategic plan. We are focusing very much on increasing visitors, supporting the rest of the places in Hillsborough that draw tourists to the town. We also, part of our goals were to improve the collection and to make sure that it's relevant to the community. And of course, that is becoming more and more obvious since Black Lives Matter as well. We want to make sure that our museum is really addressing kind of the entire history that we have in Hillsborough and Orange County. So we have volunteered, our board members have volunteered more than 390 hours since December. That says December. And honestly, I think it's more. We have all been working very hard to do all kinds of things from that museum, with that museum. And one of the things that we're planning to do going forward is we're identifying groups of people who could be in part of we call them Zoom focus groups in August, later this month, and in September, to engage the communities in Hillsborough, but also in some of our surrounding areas, to find out what they would like to see in the museum. What do they want the museum to represent? What will bring them to the museum? Because yes, we want to have tourists come into the museum, but we also want to make sure that we have people come back to the museum who live here, who want to come in and see what's going on and engage and volunteer. So you have on this little slide, I think it's a little farther along than what you're seeing on the screen. but we have a rack. Since the museum is closed, we do find though that when we're there, we often have people kind of peering in the windows. So we have developed an information rack that we put out every day so that people who are coming up will actually get information about the other things that are going on in Hillsborough. Again, a lot of them are closed, but they are learning about what's going on in Hillsborough. So we're also working on the plan for reopening because at any time, the governor may say, and we may have enough a reduction in COVID cases that we can have the museums open again. And so we're working with the Alliance because we want to have a unified plan. We want to make sure that all of our spaces, the visitor center and other public spaces are unified in requiring the appropriate masks, social distancing, limiting the number of visitors into the museum at any given time. We're looking at other museums in other parts of the country that are already open and how they're doing that. And so we think it's really important that we have kind of consistency across all of the public spaces in Hillsborough. And obviously we are going to be continuing to advertising any openings and requirements as they come up as we can. So what's happening now? We have hired 2 new positions. We redid the staffing at the museum. We now have an exhibit program coordinator and a site manager. The exhibit program coordinator is part-time. The site manager is 30 hours, which is considered full-time. Courtney Soling-Smith started in June 2nd, and Tanya Day will start August the 7th. Both of them have master's degrees in museums, and we're looking forward. They're just, every time we see them, they come up with really great ideas. So we're excited about what they're going to bring to the town, to the museum. We also negotiated a management services contract with the Alliance, and they're actually the ones that are doing the hiring of the staff for the museum. They are helping to supervise the staff, and they're assisting with programming and designing and social media when we need it. We've also updated our human resources policy just to reflect what is going on today. Excuse me, what's happening now? The other thing we have a new website, which you have here, and I hope you will look at it and check it out and share it. We now have a virtual exhibit on quilts for the collection, from the collection. We have some online educational modules that are being developed regarding, one of them is a very clever thing. Courtney Smith is also an author, and she's writing a series called Orange County History, Stories Through a Dog's Eyes. And it's very charming, and it will be very charming, and I think people will enjoy seeing that. We are also doing we're going to start planning an online lecture series to support these community themed events. We were supposedly going to have lectures through the North Carolina Council on Humanities Rhodes Scholar Program. They have discontinued that program. They are no longer going to do that, but they are going to have an opportunity for grants. So we're going to see if we can look at that and see if we can bring some real tremendous lecturers to Hillsborough in person when we can, and virtually until then. We also have done our Facebook pages. We are very much planning what we're posting. People are coming to it. We have a digital treasure hunt, which highlights architectural highlights from Orange County, and people are responding to it. They're like, oh, I think that's this, or I think that's that. And that's really engaging people. So we're trying to really engage people as much as we can in this time where we really can't have people come into the museum. And I just want to put in a plug here for if and when you may have funding available. All of us, all of the people that are on this call today, we all could benefit by having some video support. And if there's any way that there might be a way to to fund some kind of a video, either equipment or software, or perhaps someone in the community. I would think if you could consider that. I know it's a virtual, it's not getting people in to pay tax dollars, but it is going to create buzz potentially, which is what we want. Because as soon as we're allowed to be open, believe me, the streets will be filled. We will really have a lot of people here. Let's see, what's happening now. So right now we are looking at the permanent collection and trying to think about what makes sense for it, because actually it needs a lot of work. We have, our next exhibit is called YISA, Journeys of the Okanichi, which is, YISA is the word for the people. And we are going to be, we're working on that now. We're working very closely with the tribe members, and we're going to have some lectures with that. We're going to have some really exciting things, I think, with that. It's going to open in September, latter part of September. We want to make sure that we have it open for last Friday, whatever we can do for last Friday. Also for our inventory, we are working with catalog IT and really initiating a comprehensive inventory. So again, we can look at what we have and really highlight it so that we can get people to come and get excited about what's in the museum. So for our budget, we actually, the budget for the contract was for $26,100 for salaries. That's basically what the budget for the contract is for. We actually paid $30,913 in wages. That does not include unemployment insurance payments that we had to pay to staffers who were laid off at the end of December. So we actually have spent the tourism board contract as of now. The other issues are, these are just so you have information about utilities and contractors and our total budget expenditures for June of 2020. That's my kind of overview of any questions, thoughts about it, what I can do to help on this.
Any questions for Sherry?
Sherry, I think in the last 2 or 3 months, the museum has done a couple of virtual lecture series. Can you tell the board a little bit about that? I think you, I think wasn't there a speaker about for She Changed the World?
No, that was the Burwell.
Oh, Burwell School.
I mean,
Okay.
the museum has worked as part of the She Changed the World project, yes, but we did not. That was Burwell.
You didn't do the virtual speaker. Okay, I'm sorry, my mistake.
That's okay.
Any questions?
Please check out.
Hearing no other questions, we'll go to our next contract partner. And I somehow lost my agenda here, so you can help me out on who's speaking next. I believe it's Burwell School, actually. So it's Brooks. There you go.
Great. You are in possession of our Q3 and Q4 reports. And let me just speak to them in general, and then I'm happy to answer any particular questions that you might have. We also want to move forward with optimism and excitement. First thing to say is that until March 15th, everything was on track with our contract services in terms of keeping the site open, properly staffed and engaged, and conducting the programs and events that we had talked about in our proposal. And then, of course, on March 15th, everything changed in terms of how we thought about the site and our programming. So let me talk a little bit then about what life looked like from March 15th through the end of the fourth quarter. A certain amount of that time initially was spent anticipating that the shutdown would be of fairly short duration, and we would get through this period of lockdown and then move into reopening. And we were, in fact, had a plan for reopening as early as June 1st. And of course, we have continued to have to postpone that. But as Sherry rightly said, we're working closely with the Visitor Center and with the museum to make sure that we have a coherent and consistent approach to how we will manage all of these sites once we are in fact allowed to be open. And the only reason we're not open, of course, is that we're not allowed to be. For the last 3 months, the bulk of Q4, all of Q4 and the last few weeks of Q3, 2 points that I want to emphasize. One is that the maintenance of the site and its basic operations have remained robust. It has been a priority for us to make sure that we keep the site well maintained and administered, even though we're closed to the public. And the staff has been fully engaged in supporting the site and its operations. I'm happy to go into the details of what that's engaged, but I'll let you ask questions about that. Then the other point that I want to make is that really starting in April, we have had a significant and I think overwhelmingly successful transition to an online presence. So the first thing we did was we took the exhibit that was up at the school as part of the She Changed the World year-long program emphasis, and we moved that to our website so that people could see on our website all the items that had been part of that exhibit. Then we greatly increased our social media presence, Facebook, Instagram, making sure that we had at least weekly and many times daily posts to keep interest in the site and up high. We have, as Shannon noted, had 2 successful Zoom webinars. And one of the things I'd like to just mention in conjunction with that is that we've really appreciated the ability to coordinate and support that with the Alliance in terms of the technological support for those Zoom webinars. And the first in June was the history of baseball in North Carolina. The second was the chance to do a program that had previously been planned for March, but it got rescheduled and reformatted for July. And both of those were very well attended, very well supported. At the time that they were presented synchronously, both had more than 25 people register. Of course, people are registered, but you don't know how many people in the household might actually be viewing. So the number of people actually watching was probably greater than the number of registrations. But then we have also posted those webinars to our website, and we have doubled the number of people who have watched those webinars since they have been posted. So that's very gratifying. We have made 3 videos and another should be posted in the next 24 hours. The first video was called "What is the Burwell School?" and it has been watched by over 200 people. The great feature of that video was that we linked it to an educational exercise and made that available to the to teachers in the Orange County school system. So we expect to be doing more of that kind of programming, especially since children are likely not to be in school full time starting this fall. So that's an area that I think we need to be supporting as a historic site and working to engage the children of Orange County. Then we have produced 2 and are about to produce the 3rd video on the Burwell family. We did a video about Robert and Anna, and now about the children, called Growing Up Burwell. And then in addition to those videos, we will be doing a program on August 16th where we will be talking about the making of the videos, and we will be talking about the Burwell family. So again, to increase viewership, but also to deepen people's appreciation for the Burwells and the complexities of the lives that they lived. So I'll be one of the panelists for that August 16th program, along with Dr. Sylvia Hoffert and Steve Peck. And the person who wrote the video, Carrie Curry. And I want to say that one of the great and happy discoveries was figuring out that Carrie and Kate are our own version of Ken Burns. And the quality of the videos that have been produced, and I hope and encourage you to view them, has been really wonderful. They've been very, very well received. We now have our own YouTube channel. We anticipate that the videos that we've been produced will be used to enhance the in-person on-site presence and interpretation of the site once we're allowed to reopen. So we would have a video screened there at the school so visitors coming in could watch these videos as part of their experience of the site and enhanced site interpretation. So upcoming, in addition to the panel discussion I just mentioned, we are having an event for our commission, which will talk about the origins of the Historic Hillsborough Commission and how the Burwell School became a historic site. And we'll have storytelling featuring Evelyn Lloyd. And then we'll also in September hold other programs, do additional videos, including virtual field trips. I'm probably doing those in concert with the museum. And again, trying to have outreach to families and children in Orange County. And we're eager to reopen. We have continued to aggressively pursue fundraising. And we just last week launched an annual fund drive with letters going out to all commissioners and former commissioners. And that will be broadened in the weeks ahead. So we're very, very grateful for the continued support of the Tourism Board, and we're doing our very best to fulfill as best we possibly can under these circumstances the services for which we have contracted with the Tourism Board. And I'm happy to answer any questions and also cover any of the specifics of the budget, both in terms of how we have spent it and also
So let me, before Brooks, you go into that point, are there any questions on Brooks's specific presentation to us as a tourism board? Okay, hearing nothing on his presentation, Brooks, you do have to go ahead to talk about the FY21 budget adjustments.
Right. And this is largely informational, and it reflects 2 things. It does not reflect any change in how we said we would be spending the money that we would be gratefully receive from the Tourism Board. So there are no changes in terms of the relationship between the contract and, but what we have done is revised our budget. One is to reflect the fact that we now have a $9,000 grant through the North Carolina Humanities Council of CARES money. And so we wanted to reflect accurately the fact that we have another source of income. And you can see that listed there in several places. Thank you for highlighting that. And the other is to reflect the fact that one of the things we have been able to do this year is working closely with the Alliance and with our CPA firm is to improve our chart of accounts and the way in which we've structured our budget. So we've changed some of our budget categories around, especially to make it easier for us to be transparent with our funding partners, with the Tourism Board, with Orange County, with the CARES Act, but also transparent to ourselves about exactly how money is being allocated and spent. So these are just cleaning up budget categories. But we wanted to make sure that we presented this to you because any further reporting is going to reflect this version of the budget. We wanted to make sure that you had it in front of you now, so we didn't take you by surprise later. But no anticipation of changes to the way in which we anticipate spending the money that we receive from the Tourism Board. Does that help?
That does help a lot. Brooks, can you just go through the process that you all use for the NC CARES dollars and the funding agency through which you apply for those?
Say that one more time, Matt. I want to make sure I understand the question.
Yeah, just so folks understand how you all qualified for the CARES Act funding and really go more, because it seems like the biggest funding change was receiving the CARES Act dollars. If you could just go through how you all, applied for it, received it, what is it paying for, just so everyone has a good understanding of it.
Right. In May, I believe, we were notified through a general posting from the North Carolina Humanities Council that federal money through the CARES Act was being directed specifically to museums and historic sites to support their operations, and principally to support providing salary support and operational support during the time when revenues may be down, but in order to support staff retention and to keep museums and historic sites in good condition during this time. So we made that application, submitted it. That was vetted through the North Carolina Humanities Council, although it was federal money. And then we were notified that we'd received it. And I think it's just in the last week or so that I finally signed the contract. And that money should now be flowing to us. Does that help, Matt?
I think it does. I just know there's other folks who might not be as familiar with CARES Act funding. So I just want to make sure everyone was really read into the program.
Well, I mean, there were a number of different federal programs like, payroll protection and others that were designed to bring federal money to the support of small businesses. But some of that money was specifically targeted at museums and historic sites.
Great. Thank you so much, Brooks. Are there any other questions of Brooks for members of the Tourism Board?
Thank you.
All right. Hearing none, let's go to the next item.
The next item is
which is the unused funds.
Yes, it's action item 5A. There were some discussions at the previous tourism board meeting about whether or not any of the organizations would have any unused funds that would need to be returned back to the tourism board. I think that most of, if not all of the organizations, the Alliance, I think, and Sarah's here, can speak on this, the Alliance still has to look a little bit at whether they were able to realize any salary cost savings because they were able to get a PPP loan and what that amount is, and if whether or not we can reinvest that maybe into marketing for this fiscal year. But they weren't able to pull that data together yet. But it sounds like from the Q3 and Q4 reports that even though the organizations weren't open to the public, that they ended up using their funds to pay staff and keep the lights on and to do some videos and online programming and projects and things like that. So I'm not sure if this board had any further discussion on that, but it doesn't sound like the contract partners have funds to return back to this board.
Any questions or comments from the board? Go ahead, Mark.
Wait, hold on, Mark, you're muted.
You're muted. You're muted, Mark. Try again. One more time.
I'm sorry. I thought she
There you
was going to unmute me. I missed the last thing you said, Shannon. The
I said it sounded like from the Q3 and Q4 financial reports that our contract partners are not indicating that there's any leftover unused funds. That they were, can you hear me?
yeah.
Okay.
And now, so, and I'm not going to get off. I'm just going to say, I think, Brooks, especially with what has been put in his lap, is doing, I mean, my God, we're asking him to make bricks with no straw for all you biblical people. He's doing a hell of a job. And same with Sherry. I mean, with all the stuff going on, all the turmoil, Black Lives Matter, having to balance that, great. But yeah, and these are terrible times, and not turning this money back in. And I mean, I've even talked to some people who don't agree with me on this. They think they should be turning some back in. No, I don't. We're all trying our damnedest. This is tough. But I am not, and y'all, you can all hate me tomorrow. I don't care. You can hate me tonight. We cannot let the Arts Council keep just writing checks to bands. Just so you know, the streaming, we've had bands streaming here, bands that we normally pay $400, $500, $600 to. They are now working for tips. And it's not because we want to screw them. It's because we don't have the money. Well, guess what? The Arts Council doesn't have the money either. So Tori's a very nice lady, but the thing about, we want to support our artists, but it's easy to support your artists while you're spending y'all's money.
As a board member, I'd like to weigh in on this, and just from the standpoint of honoring contracts and bands that actually perform. What I heard Tori saying was, according to how their contracts were designed, and please correct me, Tori, if I'm incorrect in my interpretation, but the bands that performed were paid. And so performance is performance. And maybe we just asked Tori to expand on that, but these bands were contracted to perform. And I'm not really sure what you're requesting of the Arts Council to do in terms of their contract and agreement with these bands who did perform or not.
I'm expecting the Arts Council to be good businessmen. And
can I make a comment, Mark?
Yes.
So I have two comments actually. The first is that we've only had one band perform.
Right.
They performed in FY 2021. So okay. It's not actually related to the last funds that we're speaking of. I was in the time in between when I spoke last able to gather some data. We are paying the bands about 50% of what we would have otherwise contracted them. We did not pay them in full as originally contracted, but we wanted to give them the first opportunity to perform because they had previously been contracted with us.
You should have. So yeah. I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fine. But I've always had a problem with you guys, and you know this. The Art Council, they all dislike me, but I've always had a problem with you guys not having someone with a little knowledge negotiate these contracts. Y'all walk in, the band says $1,000, and I know because I've talked to people who do this for you guys.
So
y'all say, okay, $1,000.
Mark, keep in mind that we have a different team in place this year. We have a new team in place that has not worked with the tourism board, that has worked.
I know. All I have is your history to go on. I understand.
So understand that we're actually in a very different place with this season, and we had hopes of actually it being a revenue generating program for us for the first time this year, which just got completely derailed.
I mean, I hope you do.
I mean, it was nothing other than.
Yeah, we've all been dealt some crap.
Yes, we have.
So, and it's really, seriously, Tori, it's about the history, in my 2 years, the history with the Arts Council and what I think is overpaying. So if you guys, all I ask is that you try, and it sounds like someone is trying. So
yes.
So I do want to break in, and I'm sorry that my connection got lost, but I do want to say just point blank, I don't believe this is the time to have those sorts of conversations. There are a lot of people who are trying to pay their bills, as many of us are in this environment. I do think this is something that we need to keep in mind moving forward. And I understand I actually have not necessarily disagreed with Mr. Bateman on some of the fees that the Arts Council is paying to the bands that have previously been employed by the Arts Council for last Fridays, including some things that included a budget increase. But I think having a full-time executive director for the Arts Council is actually, or almost full-time. Tori, I don't know if you're full-time, almost full-time, maybe you just love it so much.
Yep.
But, you know, I really think there's some things to talk about here. But here's the thing at the end of the day. I'd much rather us be paying people pretty close to what they probably would have received at no fault of their own than collecting unemployment insurance that probably or possibly could pay less and have more money circulating in the local economy. That's where I view it. And so I understand why the Arts Council did what they did to hold these people harmless, because no one could have imagined a pandemic was going to occur. Now, I think we can talk later on when we talk about the 2021, 2022 contracts and things that we might want to see that comes out of that. But I don't know if this is the most appropriate time to have those conversations.
Okay. I'm fine.
Okay, but
Kim, yeah, I think Kim had her hand raised. Go ahead, Kim.
I'm just a little confused. I mean, aren't we talking about, it sounded to me like you wanted to talk about on the agenda, this is the discussion. So I'm a little confused about your stance there. Can you clarify?
I can say what my stance is. I don't believe we should be asking these organizations, because of no fault of their own, to pay money back to the tourism board.
Okay, but what is the point of this agenda item in your view?
Staff created the agenda item, but I do believe it is to take the temperature. I am one of just a few members of this. My inclination, and if we make a motion, if someone made a motion to ask for these dollars to be given back to the tourism board, would be a no vote.
So I would like to have us kind of come together on what we are expecting as a tourism board for the proper expenditure of the tax dollars during this period, so that each of these entities can make decisions about whether they want to do this virtual program or what is the purpose that they're doing. Like, for instance, if the Arts Council was doing that for fundraising for WHUP and the Visitor Center and, you know, some kind of group effort or whatever, you know, which maybe could have gone that way, you know, they would know that they had that we were behind that as well. So I'm just saying, is there anything we want to talk about for what are we going to do for the foreseeable, I mean, I think through the end of this year and possibly in the first quarter of next year, about contract payment?
So this item is particularly talking about FY20, which is over. It ended June 30th. So we're talking about FY20, and this board asked for the organizations for Q3, Q4, and year end to look at whether or not they had spent all the tourism funds through Q3, Q4 operations, and to talk a little bit about how they had been spent, what kind of special projects they had been working on, new websites, social media, video, things that they had been doing during Q3 and Q4 to kind of keep the tourism marketing program, visitor services alive at their sites. The next item is to talk about how we're going to handle FY21. And so some of our organizations at the end of their presentations got into FY21, which started July 1st, and that runs till June 30th of 21. So I think we're getting a little jumbled up a little bit in those conversations, if that helps.
So right now, you just need to entertain whether or not we're going to ask for any funds back from
FY20. And like I said at the beginning of the item, it doesn't sound like, based on the Q3, Q4 reports, that anybody is reporting that they really have any funds to give back. Oh.
So what do you need to do? Just have a motion at this point? Matt?
Just
I was going to say,
it's under action.
A motion. I would prefer, potentially, depending on the will of the body, for a motion to basically hold these organizations harmless. And Shannon, you can correct me on the language, but basically to release them from certain obligations under their contract. Because the biggest thing is, even if they had unused funds, they're still obligated to do certain things that they've not been able to do because of the governor's executive order.
Which I think the motion should include that specifically, so you're not setting any kind of precedent down the road where, oh, well, we couldn't do it, so, whatever. So let's be clear on that motion. But I agree, I think you could hold them harmless due to the governor's executive order for the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes, Matt is correct. The motion would be to hold the organizations harmless and to absolve them of some of the contractual requirements because of COVID-19. Some of their requirements are to be open to the public and give tours, and those things just were not possible. Mark has
Shannon, but it sounds like we've got a motion on the floor, though. So is there a second to Kim's motion?
No,
or is that not a motion?
Tommy and Mark both have their hand raised.
Let Tommy speak.
Okay.
So
Tommy, then Mark.
What I've heard tonight is this, that we're not asking for money back, right? We're asking for people to operate their business or their foundation in the COVID stance. Okay. Mark got upset when he found out that the Arts Council was paying full price, pre-COVID prices for, even if it was just one band. They were paying pre-COVID prices for services. And look, I'm operating at 50%. And I think Mark would love to operate at 50% right now because I know he's not. So I think what he was getting upset about is you can't operate pre-COVID at anything right now. Okay. So to hold these people not liable for any of this pre-COVID grants is not acceptable. We have to be operating. If bands are taking 15 cents on the dollar to operate, we need to be hiring these bands to do these virtual concerts. That's all he was saying. And what I interpreted is that we're not operating like it is February of 2020 anymore. This is August, when I thought we'd be full dining room by now 3 months ago if you would have asked me. And we're not, right? Mark's still not open. I mean, we can't accept that they're getting grant money and then all of a sudden paying full price for stuff. We can't accept that. I mean, that's what I interpreted. We're not asking for money back. We're not asking for anything different, but we got to hold them liable for what, I'm sorry artists aren't getting paid right now. You know what? I got a lot of people aren't getting paid either because we're 50% of what we normally do, right? I still have 100% of my rent. I still have 100% of the highest water bill in the state. I still have all this stuff to pay, but I'm only bringing in 50 cents on the dollar. And now I'm in better shape than Mark is right now. That's all he was saying. We can't operate like that.
And I think to your point.
So two things though. Tommy, I understand what you're saying, but also at the end of the day, if we took those monies back, what would we spend them on? That's a rhetorical question. But it is a rhetorical question that I think is an important question. and I understand the situation you and Mark and others are in, but if we ask for those monies back, what will we spend it on? I definitely think the answer is we wouldn't have much to spend it on. But I do want to ask a question of Tori specifically, which is, when you sign these contracts, which I think gets back to the question that Tommy and Mark are trying to get to, do you have a force majeure in those contracts? And then if so, why did you not renegotiate the contract?
We did. We did. So we paid the bands at about 50% of what their original contract was. The one band that we hired in July, that's the only band we've paid so far this year. We paid them roughly 50% of what the contract was originally for. We haven't paid the bands full price. We are currently operating at a loss, just to be clear. And I know everybody here is, for the most part, at least. But you have to think of the artists from our point of view are like your staff. We are a completely volunteer run organization. The people that we hire to work for us are these artists. And asking us to bring back the artists for a quarter on the dollar when we have funds from this board in order to hire them is like asking your staff to come back and work for a quarter on the dollar too. So please just think of it that way. This is our staff. These are the only people we hire throughout the year other than myself.
Well, I mean, an hour ago you said you pay somebody 100%, and that's what started Mark on this thing, and that's what got me thinking about it.
Sure.
Well,
I said I wasn't sure what was paid them.
Now you're saying 50, which is exactly the way it should be during the COVID situation. It's 50. So
everything we've done, we've adapted to the COVID situation. We are operating like everybody else at a loss right now. We really are. We can barely open our doors. Our gift shop brings in most of our revenue. However, this board is only contracted with us for 2 programs. So we didn't provide a full general overlook of what our budget looks like right now, but it's a mess like everybody else is. But no, we did not pay 100%. I said I didn't know, and I found out during the little bit of a break that I had.
Okay.
So Kim has her hand up. Kim, you're going to talk about FY20, not 21. Right? Because I still feel like we're weaving in and out of that.
Actually, I want to draw that line, and I want to say that I think all of us need to consider, I don't think it sounds to me that there's not anybody here who's saying anything about
give back money.
Returning money. But I think
Absolutely
we are saying that we need to be thinking about the 21 stance from the tourism board, and that would include the July last Friday. So we need to draw the line on what happened through June and move forward so we can go into the 21 conversation.
Yes. And it sounds like there's a general consensus that the tourism board does not want any of the funds back, and that the tourism board would like to hold these organizations harmless and absolve them of some of these contractual requirements because of the COVID-19 state of emergency. I think Kim kind of put that into a motion. Am I correct on that, Matt?
I thought that's what I was hearing, but she said no.
Okay, so let's try this again then. So we're going to move that the tourism board holds our contract partners harmless for the remaining funds from the 2020 contract.
120.
Is that right? Due
Yeah.
to the governor's executive order impeding their ability to perform their services under the COVID-19 or during the COVID-19 pandemic.
And yes, I think that does cover it. Is there a second to Kim's motion?
I'll second it.
Tommy Stan seconds it. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Since I started this, I would like to, with my little raised hand over here, I would like to say, I do not want anyone to give money back. I have said all along, we have been dealt a terrible hand. I just want these partners, and it sounds like Brooks is thinking about doing it. I want these partners to realize that this is not a gravy train for any of us. I'm getting killed. Tommy's getting killed. Kim's getting killed. I want you to realize that just because you're not a real business, and you're not a real business, you can't just say, oh, well, we think artists are great and we're going to pay them 100%. Everyone's got to pay now. That's 2020, because they got three concerts canceled in 2020 which I don't know what it comes to, but I guarantee it comes to somewhere between $2,500 and $3,500. That's real money they didn't pay. They shouldn't have to pay it back because they have other expenses. But just to be fair, that is let's say $3,000 that we gave for something that it was not used for. I don't care. I don't want it back, but I just want this town and this board has a way of candy coating things that the powers that be really want to see happen. I'm not going to let that happen. As long as I'm on this board and the TDA, I am going to speak my piece. And my piece is we gave them money they did not use. Don't want it back, and I understand, but we're at least going to acknowledge it. And Tommy Stan, thank you for being able to put into words what I am not able to say.
I mean, look, I don't think anyone here has asked for any money back, and I agree with that. It's nothing anybody can control. All I want to see from here forward, and it sounds like Tori maybe didn't have the information an hour ago, is that everything should be negotiated at COVID rates. That's all I want to see right now, because everything I'm doing here is based on COVID rates. So as long as the people that we're giving money to are basing their 2021 budget on COVID, then I think we're going to go in the right direction. That's all I'm saying. Tori, if you didn't have the information an hour ago and you're paying these artists 50%, that's exactly where we should be, because that's how we run a business right now, is at 50%.
Yeah.
You know, that's all I'm at.
Well,
if that's what happened, is
after we get this vote done.
I was going to say, is there any other conversation specifically related to 2020? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
I am going to abstain because I do believe I have a conflict of interest in this vote. And so it looks like the ayes have it with 1 nay and 1 abstention. And now we move to FY21.
Hey Matt, I'm gonna do a roll call vote on action items, if that's okay.
That's fine with me. Go ahead and do the roll call.
Okay. I've got Mark Bateman.
I'm an A. I agree. I was being a smart ass over here too. I don't know what you can hear and what you can't.
Okay. Tommy Stan.
Hey.
Kathleen Turner.
Aye.
Kim Tesoro.
Aye.
Barney Caton.
Aye.
Matt Hughes. You're abstaining. That's right. Sorry.
But I believe I might need to break a tie. Did Tommy say nay or aye?
You said aye.
I said A, but
aye.
I meant to say aye. My fault.
Okay, then I don't have to break a tie. So it looks like 3 ayes, 1 nay, and 1 abstention.
No.
No nays.
No nays.
4.
Oh, Bart, you were just being a smart aleck. Okay, there you go. All right. So 4 ayes and 1 abstention. It was cleaner than what I was going to say. So let's move on to FY21.
All right, let's talk about.
And I'm being facetious because Mark and I have that relationship. I just want everyone to know.
FY21, we need to discuss. I think we've already gotten some guidance that this board would like for all of our organizations to try and be frugal, get the best prices. So one thing that constantly kept coming up with the organizations was, should we redo our scope of work? Should we rewrite everything for COVID? It seemed like an awful lot of work and something that may need to happen multiple times depending on how long this goes on. And so what I thought may be easiest for both for this board and our contract partners would be to adopt an addendum to the contract that acknowledges that during this state of emergency, programming is going to go virtual. Programming is going to have to be flexible. It may be smaller once it goes in person because there's going to have to be social distancing, and that this is going to go on until the state of emergency ends, at which point the assumption and the requirement is that the contract organizations go back to business as usual with the safety precautions that are required to be in place. So I drafted this. The town attorney, Bob Hornick, looked over it. He didn't really have any suggestions, but I am happy to hear any suggestions from tourism board members.
So, Shannon, I do have one question, and I think this alludes to something else you said earlier, is we're not currently under, remind me, where are we in terms of the state of emergency? I know we've got like stay-at-home orders or safer-at-home orders, but how does that impact our folks today, which I think is what a lot of people are going to be looking at?
I think that the museums are not allowed to be open. Is that right? Until phase 3?
We're in phase 2.
2A,
So
extended phase 2.
Museums are not allowed to open to the public yet, and most museums are following the state museum's lead. So it's anticipated that, we're not going to see any tours through the physical public sites until phase 3, unless there's sort of an in-between position there.
Which makes a lot of sense. I went to the zoo earlier actually towards the end of last month. I thought that counted as a museum, but I guess because it's open air, it didn't, at least certain parts of the zoo. But I am worried in part to some extent about drafting something that's an amendment just because of COVID. Like if we're going to do something, I want it to be specifically related to COVID or more open-ended on state of emergencies, but understanding that, as I understand it, we're not under a formal state of emergency, but yet we're still restricted, and then many establishments are still restricted in terms of what they can do. So I don't know if state of emergency is the best term of art to use in an amendment to our contract partners. And I could be wrong. I could just be very dumb, and I'm missing the forest for the trees. But I feel like there are these certain circumstances. I mean, I think there's a case to be made that Burwell and the Alliance are both museums in addition to the actual museum. So I don't know how we do that. But Kim.
Well, so can we just get a little refresher here for the 21 budget year? Is the contract partnership? Sorry.
I
think Shannon's dealing with the little one.
Oh, okay. So
sorry, no, there's a cleaning crew here and they keep trying to set the alarm.
I'm trying to figure, just as a refresher, is the contract partnership that we pay for museum, Burwell, Arts Council, event centered, or is it salary, payroll centered? Because if it's payroll centered, then we have, whatever they can manage to do to be productive, that's how you're looking at it. But if it's event centered and you're having to hold on the event, then I don't know how we're translating the dollars across to propping up the organization. And if we are going to do that, we probably have to speak to that.
I'm going to speak to that a little bit, and then I'll turn it over to Shannon, but it's a little bit of all the above.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah.
If
what this board funds is a little bit of operational salaries, some events, some marketing. I mean, there's little pieces of everything, especially for the museum and Burwell School and the visitor center. The Arts Council is a little bit more program and event heavy focused as far as the funding, but there's also some administrative marketing stuff in that for each program.
So is your, what you've kind of drafted here is intended just to cover all of the varying ways that the dollars could be spent?
Yes, it's items 1, 2, and 3, which basically include flexibility for hours and days of operation, include flexible remedies for programming and events, including but not limited to offering them in virtual environments as well as in smaller limited capacities due to the COVID-19 state of emergency. And then the number 3 basically indicates that we're going to return to business as usual once the state of emergency is lifted. So yes, it was intended to be a blanket addendum that we sign with all of our contract partners.
Well, so, I mean, I guess I wonder about the event piece, you know, because at some point you have to decide, is the juice worth the squeeze? I mean, are you really going to run these events when until we get to phase 3, or until we're allowed more than 25 or 50 people, or whatever the number is that we decide? But I mean, you know, as the Chamber of Commerce is not going to run events. We're not going to run Sundays in Hillsborough with an outdoor limitation of 25 people. That makes no sense. I would not spend the TDA's money in that way. So I feel like we need to kind of balance here, because where's those dollars coming from? It's coming from all of these restaurants and bars and lodging. And so all of them are not having that income. So it's, you know, unfortunately, it is impactful across the scope here.
I think Barney had his hand raised.
Barney, then Kathleen, and then I have a question.
I don't know. Did Kim need an answer to that? Was that a question? Or just
Sounded like a consideration.
Oh, okay.
Something to think about.
Yeah, so Shannon, my dad was the lawyer, not me, but I'm just a little unclear on what this achieves. It just, I mean, it says we'll include remedies, but how does that help us exactly? What does this do?
It just basically, it's the tourism board acknowledging that Burwell School is not going to be open Tuesday through Sunday from 11 to 5, welcoming people through their doors, because that's what the scope of the work of the current contract says. The visitor center is not going to be open the hours that they were generally open, Monday through Saturday, 11 to 4, Sunday 12 to 4. It's not possible. So rather than have all of these organizations rewrite their scope and what they're doing, and then possibly have to rewrite it again in a month, and then possibly have to rewrite it again, it seemed like the easiest solution where we all can kind of agree that it's just not possible for the contract partners to operate the way that we had intended them to for FY21 until something changes with the executive orders.
The idea was that it would give the contract partners flexibility to operate in the climate in which they're in. Is that right, Shannon?
Yes.
Yeah.
But that sounds like operational, which is a piece you're saying of what we fund, but the other piece is event driven. And I don't know how we're handling that. And I guess I'd like to know what's the thought here.
Yeah, well, the events is really spoken to in item 2. An example is the Arts Council doing a virtual Last Fridays. They're kind of trying to adapt and still offer that program. And, they're talking about how they can safely do Art Walk at some point. Hopefully we can do Handmade Parade. I think we'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it. Burwell School is now, instead of offering these lectures where they would have done them in the house, they're having to do those online or possibly in their yard with a tent. I know that they've discussed wanting to try and do something like that once they're permitted to have more people.
So just as a follow-up, if I've understood, then this is kind of an easing of rewriting work requirements for the partners, but it doesn't necessarily, and we can kind of think of it contractually, but it doesn't mandate that anything in particular is going to happen with regard to requiring, return of funds or whatever. We'll decide that as we go along.
Right.
Okay. Thanks.
Kathleen, were you going to say something?
Somewhat covered, but I think it did come up, the question of, is this for operating or is this for specific programs? And the thing about the meals tax and the grants was that it was originally meant to help keep these public and cultural arts organizations operating in order to provide variety and attract people to Hillsborough so that they would go and eat and drink and do all of that. And the longer we can keep people in Hillsborough, the more they will eat and drink and visit our retail shops, which is what we want. Now these the entities were asked a long time ago to translate their ask in the form of programs and projects. And so that's what they're providing. And now they're being called to get that much more creative in how they're able to fulfill their mission and so forth. So I think this just basically puts in writing the acknowledgement that, you know, these entities have to continue to be very creative, and whether that's virtual or in other respects, they are, what they're being called to task for. They are trying to achieve that. So we've got to give them room to figure this whole thing out, at the same time continue on their mission of engaging and attracting people to Hillsborough so that our businesses can benefit and it helps our quality of life. So, you know, I think they're squeezing blood from a stone here, folks, and whatever we can do to support them so that they can continue to bring people to town, engage them, and support our businesses, I'm all for.
Thank you, Kathleen, and thank you, Barney and Kim, for your points as well. I just want to make one suggestion, and then also something that Shannon, maybe we can work into our tourism board contracts in the future. I mean, COVID's a big thing. State of emergencies are a big thing. At the end of the day, though, also, we're a community that is very much afflicted, or affected rather, by by tropical storms, hurricanes. I really think this is something that we should probably go ahead and work into our contracts regarding force majeure, and when our entities our contract partners rather have to suspend operations and whatnot. I think that's a really good thing to go ahead and just include. And to honestly piggyback against, or rather with what Kathleen was saying, though, I really think our contract partners need to offer a diversity of programming. But I also think that one of the things that could make us more resilient is offer more demographically diverse cultural programming. And we hang our hats a lot on our colonial history, and that also excludes a lot of people. I'm an African-American person in this community, and I don't always feel like our local history, which we hang our hats on, really reflects that cultural diversity as well. So I think we really need to, as part of what we're doing, also ensure that we're ensuring that we have something that really does reflect the whole of our community, as well as part of that resiliency for things like COVID or hurricanes or tropical storms, whatever that we're dealing with. I see myself in some of our history here because I am biracial, but there's a whole half of me that doesn't identify with the town of Hillsborough at the same time. And we've really got to work on that if we're going to really have a really good, strong tourism base here. And I think this is the body where we can kind of have that happen. And I'm not going to pick on Burwell School, but talking about a former slave at the Burwell School is not how we should be injecting cultural diversity into our local community. There's so much that has happened since then to really make us that diverse community we want to be as well. And I think that's where we got to think about as a tourism board too, about how we do that, how we tell those other stories to make people want to come to Hillsborough. And probably I'm on my soapbox right now, but that's something we've got to be more intentional about. Brooks?
Kathleen had her hand up first, but I just want to say,
Kathleen, then Brooks. Kathleen, sorry,
well,
I'm trying to look at like a dozen different boxes here. I'm sorry.
That's okay, Matt. That's okay. I'm sure Brooks was going to address it, but in reading the Q3 and Q4 reports for both the museum and the Burwell School, the Burwell Schools especially was very heavy on telling the stories of 20th century African-American communities with the Haiti community that got sliced in half in Durham, and getting those conversations started. And I know we've talked about this on the tourism board. I know I've mentioned it. These public historic sites are the perfect place to have these conversations that sometimes are very difficult to have. And I know we're seeing these happen all across the state, and the virtual attendance has been a fantastic facilitator of these conversations. And I'll hand it over to Brooks, but I think we've really got a great opportunity here to showcase Hillsborough's rich and diverse history. And Matt, I'm so glad you brought it up.
Now I get to say amen. So, yeah, I did want to just point out that, if you just look at the actual programming that we put on this year, especially in February, it addresses a lot of your concerns, Matt. And there are other things going on at the Burwell School that are in the works that will also help to broaden interpretation and inclusion. So your point is very well taken. And I guess the only last point I would make is just that certainly we're aware of this at the Burwell School. The Burwell School did not always do what it could have done to support the kind of programming you're talking about. And so we are making those changes now as quickly and as carefully as we possibly can.
And I don't want anyone to think that my shooting from the hip is, casting aspersions, but I really do worry about the number of folks who are not white folks who engage with our history, who come to Hillsborough and whatnot. I mean, Hayti is a great example, but also we had our own community right along the banks of the Eno, not far from the courthouse, an African-American community that was essentially wiped out by the local government, too. We should be talking about what about that and really re-entrenching ourselves in these sorts of histories, because I do worry about the lack of diversity that we have with our historical sites, about who comes to our historical sites and who participates in some of our programming too. So I do want to say kudos, because I do think it has been upped recently. I don't want to at all discourage anyone, but it's just my way of saying there's a long way to go for us to have people feel that sense of, I don't like to say the word, especially given what we just talked about, but that sense of ownership in the local community and the local history, to feel like everyone's included. Tommy, I think I'm just looking at my screen. Tommy, then Sherry.
I need you unmute, buddy.
Tommy, I think you're still muted, Tommy. Tommy, if your staff would just tell me what the Wi-Fi password was when I came over, then maybe you'd be unmuted. I'm just joking. That's a joke.
Better? Can you hear me now?
That's much better. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Look, I don't get into this very often, but you kind of brought it up by talking about the lack of diversity in this town, and I'm gonna be real blunt with it, that there's other lacks of diversity that never get talked about in this town that really need a little bit of work, because we lack as a town to bring in all of the state and surrounding members because of our lack of political diversity. We are so one-sided in this town on politics, and no one wants to talk politics. I get it, but you brought it up that we need to work.
I got no idea what you're talking about, Tommy.
Yeah,
I'm
you
joking.
should.
That's a joke. That's a
all
joke.
I'm saying is, I know a lot of people that don't come to this town because they may be a little bit more conservative than this town is, and they don't want any part of this. So I'm only bringing it up because I want to be more diverse. I want to be more racially diverse, but I would love to see just a little bit more political diversity too. And I don't mean we need to all just start voting for Trump tomorrow. I don't mean that. What I mean is we need to be more open and let the rest of the state come into this town and see other things that go on, not just the far left, which is really starting to take over. And again, I'm not trying to have a big political debate right now, but you hit a nerve with me when you start talking about lack of diversity. And you're correct with the racial lack of diversity. But I'm going to tell you, there's also a very strong lack of political diversity in this town. And I don't know how to fix it. I just know that people don't come to this town because it's so one-sided. And I wish there was a way to maybe have a communication about this sometime and figure out a way that we could become more diverse in all aspects of life, not just race.
I think, Tommy, I do think that's a good point. And, you know, to take us aside, I do consider myself a more moderate Democrat, for example, and sometimes it's hard in my hometown. But I do want to move over to Sherry. Sherry did also raise her hand for some conversation.
I just wanted, excuse me. I just wanted to point out that our Okanichi exhibit is not an exhibit about the past as much as it is about the continuation of people in the tribe who have lived here and contributed here up until now. And I think that that is something that in particular, it will kind of examine the journeys that have been made both physically and culturally, sometimes unnoticed, but always as an integral part of the community. And so I think that kind of gets to what you're talking about, Matt, at least for this particular community. And I think that's one of the things that we're going to be doing at the museums. We are really going to try to look at our history in a different context than perhaps it's been looked at in the past. And I don't want to prolong your meeting. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you. I think these are all really good suggestions, but I think we kind of need to get back on the agenda. I think we went kind of down a rabbit hole of where we would like to see our history and how we would like it interpreted. So I want to kind of bring us back around to the agenda item, which is, whether or not this board feels comfortable with kind of a blanket addendum that would cover all of our contract partners and allow for some flexibility. If we're good with the language, or if we want to basically rewrite all these contracts.
Shannon, I know because I'm chair, I cannot offer a motion, but I would make this suggestion if someone would like to make it into a motion, which is, I think the language is good. I think recognizing that we also have winter storms and hurricanes, tropical storms that for the next upcoming budget year, we should make sure those are written in. We do have a tropical storm that might hit us sometime in the next 24 to 48 hours, as an example. If we were operating normally, we did that with Florence and others. I think writing that into this amendment would be really good. And then moving forward, we should write these in as basically a force majeure into our contract.
Matt, can I go?
Yeah, Kim?
I think that's too broad. All right, I understand we have state of emergencies constantly, as do all states. We have a responsibility to the tax dollar here and how it is spent. So I don't think I don't believe that our job today would be to think about everything that might happen. I do think our job here today for 2021 is to try as best we can to determine how we support our local historical assets and their operations. But I think, and maybe Shannon, maybe we need to look at this. What is our income? What are we seeing in terms of losses, if any? How are we planning for the fact that where your income source is for the court to pay for these contracts is severely hurt? So it's all, I don't think anybody disagrees that what our vision for this contract partnership is, or how nice it might be to go into some different directions with the programming. And certainly if we're going to have to do a lot of things virtually, perhaps some of the topics you mentioned are things that could be integrated into the virtual world here. But I think there's also a fairly good case to be made that your event cost is going to be completely different when you're talking about a virtual presence. So
Kim, can I ask you, because I'm trying to tease out just so I can better understand, and this is not debate necessarily from my perspective, but so let's say Governor Cooper's order is tomorrow our museums can open, which applies to most of our bricks and mortar organizations we're talking about. But 2 weeks from now, there's a hurricane. And in January or February, there's a significant winter storm that also closes operations. Why should that not be included in that discussion about an addendum, which honestly, at least two of those, the winter storms, the hurricanes, probably should already be worked into it. Why wouldn't you include that?
So this is a permanent addendum to all contracts?
At least for the next year, just for the next year. I mean, if we're going to do it for one, we might as well go ahead and articulate. We receive a lot of hurricanes and we do receive winter storms.
But I think those are very, very temporary, and we've dealt with those challenges in the past, and the organizations and the tourism board funds have survived. This is an event on an entirely different magnitude that is prolonged, and I think it does deserve an individual attempt at addressing it, so that we're not belaboring this whole thing every single meeting, because we need these organizations to survive. Otherwise, a good chunk of our tourism comprehensive program gets annihilated, and that doesn't help anybody. You know, I mean, we've got this three-pronged stool or this four-pronged stool. We've got, you know, these sites, we've got our businesses, we've got our natural environment, and, you know, probably something else too, you know, our writers and so forth. But, you know, we lose one of those things, and it really impacts us and does not differentiate us at all from other sites. They can just go down the highway and get off on another exit. So we've got to figure out a way to keep these sites going in parallel with helping out our local businesses. It's all of a piece. And so this is a piece of paper that helps us rationalize working through this, that hopefully is over in a while, but we don't know.
Yeah, I would echo Kathleen. I think generally when we see storms and things like that, the closures are pretty temporary, maybe a couple of days. We haven't seen anything since I've been here that's closed anything for more than a week, just kind of due to just extenuating circumstances. The museum had a roof leak that closed them down for a little while, also kind of a freak thing. I don't remember a storm that closed anything down significantly since Fran. But I think Matt has a good point. I think we can try and incorporate some language into future contracts that says something about this, but I think this is pretty unprecedented for everybody to have to be closed for months at a time.
And how do we stand budget-wise, income-wise? Are you seeing a drop in income?
Yeah, we'll go through that at the end of the meeting, but we're down about 15 to 20%.
So from a sustainability piece, you know, business side of things, I just want us to consider that we are going to see our income negatively impacted as long as this continues. And as such, we can't just continue to agree that we're going to offer the full amount, especially if it's going towards programming that isn't going to generate anything good for anyone. So I don't know how we can do it, but somehow to me, we really do need to look at, you know, because events are so hampered and can't bring the attendance and the possibility of revenue, do we want to fund events until we're able to have better attendance?
I mean, from a staff perspective, I would say that I think that the virtual programming and the virtual events are good because they keep Hillsborough in people's minds and they keep our momentum going and they keep people knowing that we're still here and we're still doing things. And I also, you know, Matt just talked about diversity with regard to race, but with regard to age groups, I think that we may actually find that we're ending up reaching people that otherwise wouldn't would think that Hillsborough is just for older people or Hillsborough is just for this kind of person, but they may actually see a Burwell video and get interested in coming here when it's safe to do so again.
And I would agree with that. I think the brand gets carried forward, but I'm wondering, does a virtual event cost the same thing as the actual live event?
Maybe yes and no. I mean, there's production costs. You have to buy the software and it may not end up costing quite as much. It may end up costing more. It depends on the implementation and how much goes into it, I would think. I mean, I can tell you right now that just having this meeting virtually is a much bigger pain in my butt than it is to get you all in a room across the street. I'm juggling 2 screens. I'm trying to make sure we don't have hackers. I can hear some of you well. I cannot hear others of you well. I'm trying to screen share. I'm trying to make sure we're still live on YouTube. So it can be, it's kind of hard.
But it comes down to staff as staff. We're supporting these sites, which are basically operated by people, and these people are putting these programs or stories or exhibits or attracting people to Hillsborough in some way, whether it's through a program, whether it's through a virtual exhibit, whether it's through whatever. And so part of it is, how do we keep these important cultural entities going so that we have something at the end of this? Because if they shut down, it doesn't help any of us.
I'm not suggesting that you don't fund them. I'm suggesting that you will end up having to cut back somewhere or sink into your, backup funds. And I don't know how long this is going to go on. So I'm just asking to think about what it is that we are willing, without going through everything, if you set forth some sort of criteria that this virtual event is intended to create this opportunity in this way, that's what I'm looking for. And that's not the same as saying, no, don't fund them. That's totally different. It's just saying, we are in a new time. You are going to need to adjust accordingly.
Or it's framing it in a different way, Kim. I hear what you're saying. You're just wanting them to frame what they're doing in a different way that's appropriate to what they're delivering. And we're looking at a continuation of the delivery of something in order to meet their obligations under their mission, as well as bringing folks to Hillsborough and keeping them here when they are here, or keeping us on their map. I mean, that's just as important as anything else right now, as people are still kind of hunkered down.
So if we go back to Tori's last Fridays there, if that's done, I'm not sure if our partners are supposed to be participating in the conversation at this point or not. So that would be my first question. Or I see.
Well, they're here and they hear what you're saying, and I hear what you're saying, and I think what I'm hearing is, Mark and Tommy from a business side would like the organizations to look at ways that they can save money and get the best prices on things. And what I'm hearing from you is that these events need to be generating interest, and they need to be marketing and carrying the brand. Matt said that he would like to see events and programming that have some more diversity and have better reach. So I think all this feedback is the organizations are here, so they're hearing that information.
But I would like to ask, what was the amount that was fundraised through the virtual streaming of the last Friday's event? I think you said 700, was that right? Or was it 700?
No, the attendance during the event was 700. We haven't put any of the numbers together yet, unfortunately. So it just happened on Friday evening, and our team just circled back this morning. But it's just to answer that question a little bit more broadly, we as an organization have a mission to fulfill too. And so a big part of doing these events is simply to fulfill our mission and to do that to benefit the town. So we have no intention of doing anything outside of that, basic scope. It's just a matter of adjusting.
Well, I guess I think if the last Friday event normally is held to sort of focus on all of your artists and your galleries and to make people mindful of what we have to offer. And so if you do that in a virtual setting, and perhaps you're able to partner with WHEP like you did, News of Orange, and I don't know who else, but you're doing something that's actually pushing the town as a brand, and you're pushing And if you raise money and you're able to put that money back into the economy somehow, or back into your artists, as that's how you're paying for the band that night or whatever, that would be what I would think you would. That's just a suggestion. It's just, you know, talking out loud. But, you know, I'm having to do the same thing for the chamber. We cannot possibly think of offering the candlelight tour in December this year in the way that it's normally offered. That's not going to happen. So we've got to revamp. How are we going to do? And that, I just think all the organizations have to do the same thing. And I think the potential that if we need to save dollars, to me, it's more likely we can save dollars through the events when they can't be attended. We can't really do a good job of an event right now. And instead put, you know, use your resources for your operations and use your resources for marketing the town and building traffic back into our local businesses so that the money comes back to you again in the end.
So it looks like we lost Matt.
It looked like Tommy wanted to say something, but he's muted again.
Oh, Tommy, you're muted.
Yep. Is that better?
Yes.
So when I hear we're only down 15 or 20% in revenue, I mean, that's a good thing. I would have guessed that would be a bigger number, quite honestly. So I have a feeling it's not going to go up anytime soon. I would assume it goes down. But you know, I'm trying to simplify this whole thing in this situation. I mean, the tourism board is here to bring people to town. I mean, that's the only reason we exist, right? And you know, Kathleen, you said something a few minutes ago that really that kind of changed my thinking on this a little bit, because this whole time I've been thinking, I'm glad these organizations, these contracts are working on virtual items, because that's all they can do right now. It's the bottom line. That's all that's available. But as a business owner, I'm thinking these virtual things don't bring anyone into my restaurant, right? They're sitting at home in Carborough, watching a YouTube video on the Orange County Museum, and then they order Domino's pizza and it gets delivered to their house. They don't go to Hillsborough Barbecue. But Kathleen, you said something a minute ago that really brought my attention to change this a little bit, that let people know we still exist. You know, the virtual, if the virtual stopped going on, then they wouldn't even know Hillsborough was even out there anymore, other than if they've been here before. So, you know, I like that fact, but I'm looking at this at the big picture. Is I think no one wants these three organizations to fail. That's the reason they're contract partners. I mean, that's a big part of Hillsborough is these three organizations. So we have to find a way to keep them funded, to stay in existence, but know the fact that we're not bringing any tourists to town. So the tourism board, what we're here for is really not being executed right now. So let's find a way to keep everyone afloat, but know the fact that it's not really bringing people to town. And we, as a board, we need to figure out what's the best way to make sure all those things still happen.
So we're going to talk a little bit about marketing at the end of the meeting to bring people physically to town.
Is there anything we're not talking about in this meeting?
Oh.
It's pretty wide open. It's the most wide open meeting I've ever been in, that's for sure.
Yeah, I hope you enjoyed your July.
Yeah. It was nice because the town board didn't meet in July either. So when Monday nights I'm not here, I'm with the town board. So do we want to adopt this addendum? I hear a lot of feedback about what the tourism board wants to see, and that, like I said, the contract partners are on, so they heard all of that feedback about what you all want to see for FY21. Trying to bring us back to this action item, because it's either adopt with amendments, or get rid of it and have all the contract organizations redo scope of work for COVID.
I don't think you have to redo scope of work, but I think the tourism board needs to be a little more clear on the expectation for the next 6 to 12 months of offering a service that helps tourism in Hillsborough. And so this is vague. It's a start, but I don't think this is the final version. That's my opinion. And maybe you just need 2 or 3 people to sit this month and go a little further for next month, but I don't think this covers it.
So, I mean, can't this be put out there just like the governor's doing for us, putting us in phases? Meaning,
Yeah.
we're in phase one right now as a town where we can't bring people in, right? We can't operate. The three organizations under contract can't have visitors right now. So isn't there a way to fund like phase one, and then when it switches to phase two, then we can all of a sudden turn a light switch on, and then we can fund it differently, knowing that people are coming to town? Is that an option?
I like that.
I don't know if I understand. Are you suggesting that monies be held back based on the state's COVID levels?
No. Well, I that's a good question. I guess what I'm saying is it's kind of funny too, is that when people are coming here, the funding is 100%, right? And right now they're not coming here because of COVID. So we're not getting funded 100%. So that wasn't what my point was, but my point was, can't we do an addendum that funds what the current situation that we're in, which is COVID, okay? And then as soon as it goes to phase three and there's 100% occupancy at my restaurant, at Markin finally open, the museum's open, Burwell's open, then can't funding change at that time when the government, the governor allows us to make that change?
So how are these organizations going to stay operational if their funding is?
I didn't say there was no funding until then. I just meant we can have operational funding, which is percentage points of what the full funding would be on a normal year. And then when it's open, then that funding, when they start bringing people in, which allows more people to come spend 1% at all the restaurants, then all of a sudden the funding can change. And we can't put a date on that because we don't know when it can happen. I mean, I don't see this changing for 6 months. So why fund something for a normal year if it's not a normal year? And why hold back for a year when it could change in 4 or 6 months? I'm just asking. I'm not
right. Just for a point of clarity, these contracts are funded. We've budgeted to fund them in the amounts that they asked for to do the various contract partner agreements. We do have a whole list of unfunded things that we're going to talk about in September. And so depending on how revenues are going, we do already have, I think it was like 60,000-ish unfunded things that we cut from this budget to try and get it down bare bones.
So, but I agree with what Tommy's proposing, because until you get to phase three, or until you get to a capacity for a larger gathering, I don't see why we're going to fully fund events. I think we have to take some step back from those fully funded events. I mean,
for the same reason you said you weren't going to fund the parade, for the same exact reason. You're not bringing people in. You don't feel like that event should go on because you're not doing justice to the town by not bringing people in. That's the reason why you don't want to do it. It's not because you don't want to do it. It's not going to serve the purpose that it was supposed to do.
If a special contract came before us right now and they said, we're going to do such and such event, we would tell them we're not funding that. There's absolutely no way. I mean, you're not able to do that piece of your contract. That should not, this goes to you, Kathleen, that shouldn't have anything to do with the operational funds that we give them. We're still going to fund their operational need, and we would still fund their marketing need. But event need doesn't seem like that's a thing right now.
Because there's no events.
Well, they are still doing events. They're just doing them virtually. Oh, Kathleen, are you muted?
Yeah, she's muted.
Kathleen, we can't hear you. Am I the only one that can't hear Kathleen?
No, I can't hear.
Kathleen, is your mic off? I still can't hear you. Yeah, like with Last Fridays, they are still having those events.
Yeah, but you could have the last Friday, rather than pay them anything, they can raise their money through the donations on, as the event goes on, and then put that money around back in the artist's pockets or what have you. I mean, you can do that differently because it is a different time. So you're basically saying it's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, you're saying, okay, on the one hand, fund these events because it's not their fault that it's COVID, and they're at least trying and they're doing a virtual thing, and it's bringing some attention to Hillsborough for, on a Friday night when everybody and their brother's doing something virtually. I mean, let's be honest. You're not able to do the event as it was originally intended. And had you asked us for that amount of funding to do that virtual event, I don't believe we would have approved it. So I think you have to separate out what is event from what is marketing and what is operational.
So just to chime in here, I don't particularly disagree with anyone. I'm just wondering do we have to decide how much we cut now, or can we simply come in on the back end and make a decision? I mean, maybe it's less fair and it certainly puts the organizations in maybe a more uncertain position, but we could come in, might be simpler to come in on the back end and say, this met our expectations, this didn't. I don't know if that's too flaky, but I'm just finding it hard to decide right now, what to kind of cut, or where that line would be. It may be simpler to do on the back end, even if it creates other issues.
I see Mark and Tori both with hands up.
Do we? And I apologize. Let Tori talk. I have been in her way enough tonight. Please let Tori talk.
That's fine, Mark. And I don't know if it's appropriate to weigh in as an organization, but because we have funds at stake, it just seemed worth bringing up. We do our quarterly reports. We can account for those funds as they come in and what we're using them for as the year goes on. And we understand that if we are not using them, we pay them back at the end of the year. It would be nice to have the opportunity to try and produce the programs to the best of our ability as the year goes on. But knowing that we do report to this board on a regular basis, including financials for our programs and what that's going to look like. And if it changes really significantly, we understand that, that changes the financial position and the contract with the board. But it would be nice, as the contracts have been approved, to be able to attempt to carry them out.
I think we should set a clear expectation, though, and maybe that isn't going to happen tonight. But I think that it would be unfair, because we'd be doing exactly what we just went through in the last agenda item, trying to backtrack over the previous quarter and say, well, you weren't able to do this or that. And nobody wants to put you in that role. We want you to understand like a goal, or, just sure. Everybody be on the same page.
No, I absolutely agree. And it would be great to have those guidelines so that we understand what your expectations are. But I think looking at it now that we know we're doing this inside of COVID, being able to look at it quarter to quarter, or maybe even just the first quarter, to kind of give us all an opportunity to readjust our programming further for the fall with the new contracts. Just 2 cents. I'm just weighing in. I don't get to vote.
Hello.
Hey, Matt, can you hear us?
I can be heard. Sorry for that. My phone went from 25% to like 0. My phone ended. My computer ended. All the things. I have heard enough of the conversation. Rather than talk about this now, what I would propose, and Shannon, you can tell me if this is in order, I think it would be great to do a subcommittee to talk about these things. I don't think all of these things are going to be resolved overnight. I think 2 to preferably 3 members got together and just kind of hashed through all the different things that our contract partners are going to have to deal with in the next year, understanding that we're probably still in the blind. I mean, there's a good chance come June 30th, 2021, we still might be not able to ask for the same things from our contract partners. There's a good chance that last Fridays might not occur. And I really believe that unless we have a vaccine or something else, that we're going to be in the same position for over a year. And having a subcommittee, an ideologically diverse subcommittee together that can really go through these things rather than hold up our contract partners' time, our own time, and just really work through this, because this is not something that's going to be resolved in October, November, December. I mean, there's a good chance we're not going to have a Christmas parade this year. I mean, there's so many other things that we know probably just aren't going to happen. This is a longer term conversation.
Yes.
Can I say one thing, Shannon?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to hold it too? So I just wanted to say that I think
I don't know what it is, so I don't know if you can say it. It's related to this topic directly.
It's definitely relates, pretty friendly. I think what I hear everyone saying and what we all want, collectively, businesses, partner organizations, all of us, all of our work, we all want to feel valued in what we're doing, and we all want to feel supported. And I think that from a partner organization perspective, and out of respect to the tourism board, knowing and having clear expectations from the board, given the particular circumstances that we're in, is really important and does require that thoughtful feedback and time. And, we're all suffering in very, very different ways, but we're all dealing with the situation. So I just want to put that out there. And I think that is kind of what everybody is saying, is that they just want to feel like they matter and that the work they do matters. So that's it.
So what I'm hearing is that it sounds like the tourism board would like to table this item and work on something a little bit more specific than the very broad addendum that I worked on. So if we have a motion to table, and then we can talk.
Table this thing.
So
let's see what happens. We're in uncharted territory. And I don't think we need any rules yet. And I'm the one who started this crap, but I don't think we need any rules yet. I think everyone is trying, even Tori, we're all trying. And let's just see what happens. And I mean, and Kim's going to disagree with me, and she's going to chew me and you in later. I just don't think we need any rules yet.
I think we need
to.
Like
to that point, can I make a suggestion, which is, this is going to be a longer term conversation we're talking about as it relates to 2021. I'd like to go back to the idea of a subcommittee of this group, really work on that. And what I would suggest is myself, Kathleen, and Kim to work on that, to make sure that we have our cultural resources represented, to have the town, which is arguably the one that collects this funding, and then also our business community, and trying to work something out, because I don't think we're gonna get over this COVID hump January, February, December, any of that time. I really think we're going to be looking at this at long haul, and I think it's going to probably take much of our next fiscal year for us as a country to get over it. So let's go ahead, from a cultural resources perspective, from a business resources perspective, from a public sector perspective, let's go ahead and talk about some of those things as a subcommittee, rather than trying to hash it out here right now. Literally on day 4 of the new fiscal year. I don't think that's good for us either.
So I wanted
to. I guess day 34 now. For some reason, I'm backtracking to July, but like day 37, day 33 on that.
So Matt, I just want to move that we table this item and that a subcommittee be formed to discuss and bring back recommendations to the tourism board.
I second.
You volunteered Kathleen. I need her to nod and or shake her head as to whether or not she will participate.
No, why are you selecting the board today? I mean, the 3 today, Matt, sorry. I think Tommy Stan is I mean, I'm not playing. I think Tommy Stan is a great representative of the other side. He's business. I mean, and I think we have several people who cross over. Why are we picking the 3 today? That's all I want to know.
It was only a suggestion based on what I heard, and for the most part, I've heard Kim because of my phone dropping. So I've not heard Tommy during this perspective.
Tommy's had a lot.
Forces town, no matter what. I really don't care who the people are. Personally, I just want a subset of this group to sit down and like really, really talk so we can figure this out. Because it's not going to be a quick and dirty and it's done. This is probably going to take a while for us to figure it out.
Tommy.
Mm-hmm.
Hello.
Hey, Mark wants you to serve. Mark and Kathleen, you and Kathleen were both volunteered.
There's nothing
against your will.
No, I mean, it's funny when he mentioned that. I thought I usually don't like to volunteer for that stuff because I'm a busy guy, but I think I would be perfect on that because I have a different side of things, and I think it would be fun to sit down and talk to other people and figure some of this stuff out because this is a big deal, and I would be honored to serve on that.
Okay, Kathleen, what about you?
I still can't hear Kathleen. I don't know what happened.
She's been off air for a while.
I didn't say Tommy instead of Kim, just for the record. I said Tommy instead of maybe Matt. I know we had that we had that relationship, Matt. I just want to make sure Tommy was included. Tommy's a little right, Matt's a little left.
Anyone who knows me, I just want to get things done. I want to bring people together. I want us to work things out. It could be Kim, it could be Tommy, it could be anyone. But I do think making sure that we have certain sectors represented in a subcommittee that can really talk through these things and bring it back to the board is really important. Because I'm not gonna lie, but we're almost 90 minutes in. We normally don't even meet for an hour and a half. So clearly there's a lot of things that we gotta suss out and maybe go back to our stakeholders that we represent and whatnot and come back because it's not gonna be a quick and easy solution no matter what we're talking about.
Kathleen might be trying to redial in. I was gonna have her just like hold up one finger yes or 2 finger no.
If she could leave and then come back and see if that would fix it. Because that's weird that her mic would just stop working in the middle of the meeting.
Unless her battery went dead.
I think she's back.
Yeah, she's back. I still can't hear.
I've been here. What?
Oh, there you go. We can hear you now.
Maybe she's having the same issues I was having earlier. Like, where's the thing? Like,
no, I can hear her now. Kathleen, say something.
There is nothing that indicates I was muted at all.
No, it just stopped working. It works now, though.
Yeah, I don't know. I went ahead and went out and came back in.
It worked.
Okay, good. All right. What'd I miss?
Not much.
You missed Matt thinking this meeting has only been an hour.
Told whether or not you would. I've told you, it's Matt, whether or not you'd be willing to work on a subcommittee for someone from the town, which would be me, someone from the business sector, which originally I said Kim, but probably Tommy, and someone to represent the arts and cultures area of town, which I suggested would be you, to talk through these issues related to COVID and closures and that kind of thing. That way, we're not making a decision now in day 4 or day, 34 of the fiscal year. Will we come back in September with something more fleshed out, more concrete, less stream of consciousness? And I would love to have you on that subcommittee.
No, that's fine. Yeah, it's way too big of a conversation to have 2 hours into this meeting. I mean, we're already losing Mark. I think he's taking a nap.
No, I just do that. I've done that all my life. eyes closed. I cannot help it. But Matt, I think him with the chamber doesn't she bring something there? I mean, why's it got to be 3?
Yeah, I was
I'm gonna
gonna
fight
ask
you
the
and
same
everything,
question.
Matt. I mean, why's it got to be 3?
Because, and Shannon needs to correct me, but I believe 4 members is a majority, which is quorum.
Aha.
You can only have 3 in a subcommittee. Otherwise, you have a quorum, and I have to like public notice the meetings and record them and everything.
That's a liberal. Okay, that's fine.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I feel like the chamber is a real big part of this. I feel like if Kim wants to do this, I would be happy to let her do this because she's going to represent my business as well as I would. So if that makes more sense, please do that.
Now, I think, Tommy, I like that you were passionate about it, and certainly I can talk to you about, you can ask me what the other businesses have to say about it or what they're experiencing or what have you. So we can have that kind of communication as you move forward.
Okay.
And also, I feel like anyone who participates doesn't feel like the deck is stacked against them one or the other. And I think, and not to disparage other members of our board, I believe there's a lot of mutual respect between me, Kathleen, I would also say Kim and or Tommy, that we could all work through it together. And that's not saying that none of us could, whether it's Barry or Mark or whatnot. It's just the folks that I immediately thought of. I'll admit that. So if it's not Kim, it's, Tommy would be great. I'm just saying, let's just work as a subgroup and bring something that's more fully fleshed than us spending possibly the next 3 hours trying to flesh it out ourselves.
Agreed.
Because, like I said, with hurricanes and ice storms, I've already had that brought up on staff when I was up with the historical museum. There was questions like, if we had to close, is that out of compliance, even if there's not a state of emergency? I think there's a lot of things that we could go ahead and suss out and talk about and come to a pretty good understanding too. I mean, I feel pretty good. Everyone on this board, I think, would be a really good person to have on a subcommittee, but let's just go ahead and talk it out. Because I just don't think the issue is going to go away, unfortunately. As much as I want to go to the Hot 10 roof on a Friday night, I just don't think it's going to resolve itself anytime soon.
So do we have a motion to table the item and form the subcommittee?
I thought I made that motion, didn't
I think so, but I would make sure that motion to I would make sure that motion to table also named those subcommittee members who work on it in the interim, just to make sure we got all bases covered.
Okay, so the motion needs to say that we're going to table this item and we're going to form a subcommittee that includes Tommy Stan, Kathleen Turner, and Matt Hughes to bring back recommendations to the board. Is that right?
Yes, for expectations during COVID-19 and other natural disaster related closures.
No, I think we.
Yeah.
I don't think we.
I would go ahead and include that just as an option. I don't think that's the biggest thing. COVID's the biggest thing, but other things related to natural disasters would be a secondary thing. It's not the primary purpose.
I mean, I don't want to make that motion because I didn't gather from people here that they supported that. I think we all thought that's a short-term thing, and this is a long-term, ongoing, effectual thing. And so I think we want to treat this as a COVID thing, not as a what if there's a hiccup thing.
Well, let's work on COVID.
COVID only would be fine. COVID only would be fine.
All right, so then I think my motion that said everything up through the COVID, where Shannon, you added the COVID-19 piece, but don't include the natural disaster piece or other acts of God, we're good with. Is that right? Do I need to restate it again?
Tim, I thought that was an excellent motion and I'm going to second it.
All right. Matt, will you call the
So
vote?
it's actually been properly motioned and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
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 All
Aye.
those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is approved. Thank you. Shannon, I'll work with you. I will work with you to pull the subcommittee together. Beyond that, though, beyond FY 2021, I know that we have, I'm trying to remember without having my computer in front of me, which just died. I believe we have employee reports or staff reports.
Yeah, hold on, I have to call the
with
vote.
you and
Can you hear me?
yes.
I have to roll call the vote real quick.
What?
Okay.
So when I call your name, say aye or nay on
Oh,
the,
she's going to do a roll. She's going to do a roll call vote, and then we'll move on to the next item.
Okay.
Kim Tesoro,
Aye.
Kathleen Turner,
Aye.
Barney Caton,
Aye.
Tommy Stan. You have to unmute, Tommy.
Aye.
Mark Bateman.
Said
All right. Then aye. There you go. Sorry about that, guys. They make us do that for public records law and action stuff. The next
Oh,
item is
is the public watching this?
yes. Smart
Now,
Alex
Mark, you of all people should know the public's watching.
watching.
I think we need to define the public, but anyway, that's another story. Okay, thank you.
The action item 5C is the item that we added. Kim Tesoro's term is up at the end of this month. She does have one more term that she can run, and she has indicated that she would like to be reappointed to this board. So I need to know the will of this board.
The chair would entertain a motion to recommend to the town board to reappoint Kim Tesoro for another term on the board of the tourism board.
I would like to motion that Kim Tesoro is reappointed to the tourism board.
I'll second.
Barney motioned. Is there a second?
Yeah, Tommy motioned and Barney seconded.
Do I have to?
Okay. No, you don't have to explain. It is a motion. You're good.
Okay.
Any discussion on the motion to recommend to the town board to reappoint Kim Tesoro to the board? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
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 I guess we should do a roll call vote, correct?
Yeah, Mark Bateman,
Aye.
Tommy Stan,
Aye.
Barney Caton,
Aye.
Kathleen Turner, Matt Hughes,
I heard.
I guess I'm an aye.
Kim,
Unmute.
all right. I'll take that to the town board for next month.
Shannon, do you know if that will be on the next town board meeting agenda?
If I can smush it on for sometimes they let me smush stuff on and sometimes not for the 10th.
I think if you can get it in by tomorrow, it should be on our agenda on Monday.
Well, it depends on how many items you already have.
That's a crowded.
It's a consent agenda. The consent agenda. But anyway, I get that. What's our next? Is there another action item, or is it just staff report?
No, it's a discussion item, and it's the review of the scope of work for the holiday parade, if there's any questions and comments. And I will say that I already found a typo because I used the template for handmade parade. So it says Arts Council in one of the paragraphs at the end.
I thought I took all those out.
Do you want to go ahead and give the presentation for that agenda item, and then we can go through just some discussion if we need to?
Sure. So this board was asked by the chamber to contract for the Hillsborough Holiday Parade and tree lighting event. The chamber has found that and Kim, you can feel free, don't let me speak for you. Feel free to interject. The chamber, originally did this event because it helped out the businesses downtown. they're finding that it's more actually a tourism draw than it is a draw for a lot of the businesses. Some businesses, especially the food service ones, do see increased business that night. But a lot of the retailers are already closed and things like that. So the chamber is asking, because it brings so many people into town, for financial support. This is currently on the unfunded list that we're going to talk about in September. But if this board does decide to fund it, we're going to have to move very quickly. So I talked with the chamber about going ahead and starting to work on a contract and a scope of work for how the event would be carried out, so that if this board has the funding and is able, we can go ahead and jump on that. Because normally we would have started planning for the holiday parade starting back in June or July, Kim. So we're already going to be kind of starting this off behind if somebody finds a vaccine for tomorrow and we're able to have the parade, which, may or may not happen, but we just want to be able to move quick. And so basically this scope of work outline just says these are the expectations for everything that the chamber should do in order to carry out this parade and make it be a successful tourism event. And Kim has reviewed and deleted the document, pieces of the document.
And I just want to interject that. So the parade is not loved by the business community, and the parade takes maximum a lot of hours from October forward, the full devotion of the staff to make it happen, and to the detriment of the membership. So basically the chamber is doing this as a community event. And so that's where we're starting from. Now we're in, August. Again, not in phase 3 and still limited to less than 25 people. So I'm not sure how I can do a lineup with less than 25 people. So just want to reiterate that if we end up not holding the parade, we of course we would return the funds if that's how we do it. And at this point, I wouldn't even ask for the funds till I thought we might be moving forward. I mean, I want the contract in place so that it's there, but I don't necessarily want to draw anything until we are on more solid ground for what we can or cannot do.
Are there any questions or comments about the scope of work? Go ahead, Kathleen.
Yeah, no, scope of work's great. What kind of funds are we talking about? And was there a report from the December 2019 event? I mean, are there numbers that we can look at like we do for the other contract providers?
Yeah, so once this board finalizes this expectation, then the chamber fills out basically the exact same packet that all the other contract partners, where it asks all the questions about budgeting and how you plan on marketing and how many anticipated participants did you have last year, how many do you anticipate for this year. This is just kind of the step 1, outlining expectations.
So was there a report from the December 2019 event?
What do you mean?
So the special, because that was a special project, right? So it's treated differently, and there weren't any reporting expectations or requirements with that.
So we have a internal report to the board of directors knows how all of that worked out, and all of those figures will be utilized in completing the paperwork for next month if we continue to move forward.
Yeah, and the chamber, I think I probably folded it into a staff report in January, because I probably just got those numbers from the chamber and just reported back on them. Since it was a sponsorship activity, there isn't like a standard report that we get back. We just usually get information from the sponsored entity on what their numbers they did. And then I take that and fold that into our annual report data. So I can look up that information for you and email the board. It's not a problem. Any other questions, comments? Scope of work? Ready to move on? All right, Sarah, do you want to hit the highlight reel on your executive report?
Absolutely. Can you pull that up, Shannon?
Yes. Can you see it?
You have it. Thank you. Yep, that's great. Thank you. So brief highlights, and in the interest of time, I'll go fairly quickly. We're still closed. We are following, the visitor center is, like the museum and the Burwell School, following the orders from Governor Cooper's office. And we're paying attention to that, but we're continuing to provide visitor information, visitor services. We have information on the porch of the visitor center. We're staffing the visitor center. So we are in the office answering the phones, checking email. And we've been very fortunate in that in the past, I would say past 2 weeks, I've noticed there've been a real uptick in the number of people that are calling about coming to Hillsborough, wanting information, planning to visit. So I am seeing interest in my office and some foot traffic. I mean, people are picking up the materials that we're putting out, and we're keeping account of those. So in next month's report, I'll have that numbers for you guys. So you can see what, who is taking what. So there is interest. One thing that I'd really like to point out is our online gift shop. And I put a link in there. I don't know if you'd like to go to it and check that out. Amanda Boyd is our visitor services coordinator, has set up an online gift shop, and we are having a great deal of success with that. I think for a visitor center that's closed right now, to have made a couple $100 in 2 or 3 weeks, I think that's really wonderful in terms of our merchandise. We are doing so curbside pickup. We do local delivery, and then we're also mailing out Hillsborough gift boxes, so people can purchase a gift box with either a t-shirt or a hat, different merchandise, and then we will ship those out. So we're getting more creative and trying to do just what we've talked about. There's an example of one of the boxes that's been really popular, and we're doing a lot of internal work in the space while we've been closed. So you can see that report is included. In terms of our marketing efforts, we are having to go back to the drawing board a little bit. We finished the Spotlight campaign with WREL, and Shannon will talk about this a little bit perhaps, but that campaign has wrapped up. We're going to be doing advertising again on WUNC and WFDD, and then also on social media, sponsored ads. We've done the Find Your Calm in historic Hillsborough and have used that campaign. We've talked recently about the need to not only remind folks, or not only invite people to come to Hillsborough and find your calm, but also to remind them that this is a safe place to come. And so Shannon's going to work on getting some photography of folks in masks, that you're safe when you come to visit Hillsborough, because that is a missing piece in the
Yeah, and the Find Your Calm campaign we started running in June in anticipation that we would be able to open and move into phase 3. That didn't happen, but we're gonna stick with Find Your Calm. We got some feedback from the retailers that they have opened and they have some hours, but people just aren't coming. I talked to Lori Policelli over at the Orange County Visitors Bureau to see if they're seeing the same thing. And she said, yes, the data that they have from their marketing firm just said that there's not a lot of consumer confidence right now. So, people are nervous about spending money. They're also nervous about going places because people may or may not be wearing masks. So we did have a photographer come out and take some pictures in various businesses of people doing business in masks. And we're going to try and launch with that Find Your Calm. We've got a tagline that we're working on, Find Your Calm, shopping and dining in Hillsborough. And then we're going to accompany that with some imagery of our business owners and their patrons, just being cautious in hopes that we can help boost some people coming to eat, some people coming to shop. And this, from the marketing, this is the kind of Find Your Calm that we've been working on. And then Chapel Hill, the Orange County Visitors Bureau has included us in some of their regional marketing. which is nice because that brings people kind of to this area, and then we can try and pull them once they get here.
One of the things that we found,
online gift shop, it's something that we've been talking about, but we haven't had time to do. So it's actually, again, you know, the gifts, the visitor center is closed. Technically, people can't come in, but there's still a lot of work going on in that building. And this was really something that was great. Amanda at the visitor center did a great job with it.
and I did provide a report to you guys in my director's report with these MSAs and that the Alliance now has in place, and sort of an expanding, newly configured staff. I wanted you guys to see who exactly is involved in doing what. So I laid out job descriptions as a part of the report. You can see Kate and Carrie and Annie, and everyone can see what we're up to. I didn't talk about programs. We do have a lot of our programs working on making those virtual. We've got a speaker, Randall Jones is scheduled to do, he's doing a talk on women in women in North Carolina, and that will be able to be viewed in August. So that's coming up. And, you know, we're doing like Burwell's doing and like the museum is doing, working on making our program offerings virtual. And so just being creative with the work that we're doing there. And I just, you know, I really want to commend my staff, everyone, because they are doing a tremendous job in a challenging environment. So I think they do need a shout out, and credit needs to go where credit's due. So.
And then I will go into, so tourism staff report. I kind of already touched on marketing and what we're doing there, what we're seeing, and how we're working with the Orange County Visitors Bureau and the downtown merchants. This is our food and beverage tax report. We don't have June yet, but we do have March, April, and May. Again, down 20% in March, 13% in April, which I was really surprised about because that was the first month that we were fully closed. And then down 16% in May. I anticipate we'll kind of stay in that range. Maybe it'll get better as we get some more consumer confidence. We'll have to see kind of how that goes. And then the only other update that I had for this board, and which we talked about in the beginning, was that Billy Maupin did resign. He's no longer with Red Eye, so he resigned from the tourism board. So we do currently have 2 open positions. We have one at-large position, which is anyone who lives, owns property, or works here in Hillsborough can fill that position. If anybody thinks of anyone that might be interested, let me know, and I'll kind of send them the announcement for the position. And then we also do have an open restaurant, pub, food service establishment that collects the tax seat. So if anybody knows anybody interested in those seats, that would be great. And now it's board up. If there's any board member updates or questions or comments.
Shannon, just a quick comment to Sarah that I was a little chagrined not to see our one spasmodic offering of the new Churton Street History Stroll in her report, but we do have that queued up. So when things open up, we can, and in fact, they've sold one ticket. It was to my mother. So they have $15 of my mom.
That's very cute. Is she your biggest fan?
She loves history more than me. Maybe.
All right. If there aren't any board member comments, Matt, would you like to adjourn this meeting?
Yeah, if there is no objection, I would ask for unanimous consent to adjourn the meeting. And hearing no objection, we are adjourned.
All right, meeting adjourned at 8:14. Thank you all for your time.
Everyone.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everybody.